All right, we're looking at question number 12 here, which is Verit purchases a motor vehicle for $24,500. Always good in these situations to underline any important information here. So I'm going to underline the 24,500. I'm going to depreciation rate at 13% per year, and that's actually only for the first 2 years, and then on the third year it depreciates by 9.5%. All right, so it's an interesting one because it's got two different parts to it, just to be aware that it's not a constant depreciation rate. So let's go through each individual part. So part A. Okay, so we've got calculate the value of the vehicle after 1 year. Two different ways you can attack this problem. You can either look at it and say, well, how much as a percentage am I getting back? Now, if I'm getting 13% depreciation rate, how much as a percentage am I getting back? Given that we were at 100% before, therefore we're getting 87% back. So you can go with 24,500 times 0.87. Easy. Done. Or the other option is, and this is kind of a method that you can use for any situation, is 24,500. Now we know it depreciates, so I'm going to start off with a 1. Now that 1 represents 100% as a decimal. I'm going to subtract from that 0.13, which is 13% as a decimal. How many times am I doing that? Well, I'm doing that once. These two calculations will actually give you exactly the same value. They will give you $21,315. Okay, either one of those methods are completely fine. Part B. Now I'm going to do it both ways again, just to kind of show you what's happening. So I'm going to go with the initial method that we came up with, which was talking about how much as a percentage we're left with, but this time we have to do it for both the end of the second year and also the end of the third year, because don't forget the third year we're reducing by 9.5% rather than 13%. So I'm going to start with 24,500. I'm going to multiply it by 0.87 for the first year. Now, I could times it by 0.87 for the second year, but I'm just going to say it's squared. All right, now we've got to think about 9.5%. We're reducing it by 9.5%, which is close to 10%. So what are we left with as a percentage? Well, we're left with 90.5%. Now, as a decimal, that is 0.905. Sorry about the handwriting there. Okay, that's one method. Let's go to the other method. I'll actually do this in a different color so we can see the difference in the two. It is 24,500 times. Now, I'm going to go with 1 minus 0.13. How many times are we reducing by 13%? Well, we're doing that twice. Then I'm going to go 1 minus 0.095. How many times are we doing that? Well, we're doing that once. Okay, now let's just put this into the ideas of a conversation that we're trying to get here. This does the first 2 years. So that'll do the first year and the second year by times it by 24,500. Then at the end of that, we multiply it by this value here. Once again, either of these methods will work fine. You'll end up with exactly the same value of $16,782.37. Rounding to 2 decimal places. So I'm going to say that again, rounding to 2 decimal places, because we're dealing with money. All right, last question, part C. I might end up using the actual page itself in a moment, but we'll see how it goes. Now, this one's interesting in terms of the question because it's talking about the average rate of depreciation. Average rate of depreciation is 11% per year. So what I'm going to do is ignore all the other parts and just focus on 11% per year on average. I'm going to use the second method in this case. So I'm going to go 24,500 times by 1 minus 0.11. That's 100% minus 11%. How many times are we doing it? We are doing it 6 times. Okay, that gives us a value of $12,176.04. So at the end of the 6 years, we are left with $12,176.04. Now, we're going to use that value to work out just that final 3 years, but we actually need the value from the previous question. which is $16,782.37. So I'm going to write this in red because I'm going to write on the actual page itself. Now, after the end of the 3 years, which is now the start of the fourth year, we're going to go $16,782.37. Now, we need to times it by the change in rate. So 100% minus a rate. So I'm just going to call that one R. How many times are we doing it? Well, we've already done the first 3 years, so we're just focusing on the final 3 years because we're going up to 6 years. We need that to be equal to something. So at the end of these extra 3 years, which is at the end of the 6 years, we determined that it was actually this value here, this 12,000. So I'm just going to write 12,000. $176.04. Okay. Now, please do not do this one by hand. You can actually do it by hand, but your calculator has the solve ability on. So please use Solver on your calculator or even NumSolve. Now, we put that in NumSolve and solve for R. You'll end up with 0.1014 to 4 decimal places. Now, the reason I've gone to 4 decimal places because that turns into, as a percentage, 10.14. So it actually gives me a 2 decimal percentage rate. And that's actually how to figure out the final rate for the last 2 years.